early June, and I'm standing here in the apple orchard. Today I'd like to talk about the things that get into our apple and pear trees. Apple and pear trees are susceptible to a number of different problems, particularly fire blight, codling moth damage, sun scald, and aphid attacks. And so we'll go ahead now and have a look at the first of these problems. Turn things around here, we'll take a look. Right here we have an apple that has a brown spot on the end of it. That's called sun scald. This happened when the temperatures reached the upper 90s and there was a little bit too much sunlight laying on that piece of fruit. It's not a real big problem as long as it's not too prevalent. Back in here we've got an apple that's got brown spots all over it. It's pretty ugly looking, and it's actually suspect for having picked up the apple disease called fire blight, which goes into the blossoms when the bees are pollinating. Directly behind here we can see some more black looking fruits. Those definitely took in fire blight. Here below the shoot is dying from fire blight. The most reasonable treatment for a disease like fire blight is that we would use the pruning shear that I have right over here on the table. Pruning shear is really my favorite. There are other alternatives. We could use this material here, which is called agrifos. It's a chemical. It's not organic, and I don't usually use such a thing when I'm dealing with fire blight in apples or pears. But for those of you who don't care, it will work nice. Now here's a shoot right here that shows fire blight real well. We've got brown leaves. You can see the shriveled mummies of what was the fruit on there. Now what happened is the bees flew over from one of the neighborhood infected trees carrying the fire blight disease with them, and when they sat down over here in the fruit, that disease transmitted into the branch, killing everything around it. Now this will travel down the branch towards the main trunk of the tree, and we recommend that you prune away at least 12 inches of healthy growth below. And so that would mean I'm going to take off the entire branch right here with my shear. There we go. That's a done deal. Don't be chicken about this one, because if you leave it in the tree, you're going to end up with it continuing to spread. So go ahead and be sure to take it out clean. Back over here on the table, I have some other issues. Here I've brought along some codling moth trap. Now, codling moth is the critter that's the worm in our apples. I'm sure most of you know it. It gets into both pears and apples, just like the fire blight disease gets into pears and apples. So it's the same with either. These traps would be hung up in the tree usually around April. And sometime around petal fall, you'll start to see the ugly gray moths get stuck inside the trap. Now, petal fall means when the flowers start to come out of the tree. Over here, I have a bottle of an organic material called spinosad. Spinosad is a bacteria that will control the larva of the codling moth as the adults come to lay eggs. We can time this by watching for the moths to show up in our traps. When you see the ugly gray little moths showing up and you're certain that the flower petals are mostly fallen from the tree, because spinosad is dangerous to bees and you don't want to let the bees in on top of this stuff. Once the flower petals are gone, you can start spraying your fruit with this material. I usually will combine it with another material. This one here is a horticultural oil. Horticultural oils will control any aphids that are up there. They work well on mildew. They smother egg clusters, and they also bind the spinosad so it doesn't come off the branches. I know a lot of people, novice gardeners particularly, they want to use hose-on sprayers. Honestly, the tool for this job is this guy right here, a tank or a backpack sprayer. They're much easier to use. It's the only kind of a tool where you can combine both oil and spinosad into the same tank. Here I have a piece of fruit, this one right here, that on the flower end there, on the butt end of the fruit, you can see some kind of brown junk. The brown junk is what we call frass. That's the crud or the ejecta that comes out of the hole when the little worm tunnels into the fruit. A tool to use to verify that you actually have a worm in the piece of fruit really is a knife. It's like this one right here, and we just go ahead, cut the fruit open, look on the inside, and see if we can find the worm in its chamber. When you get a hold of fruit that has worms, there we go, there he is right there. Check it out, see? So this is one that got by my spray. The worm hasn't yet tunneled out of that fruit. Most of the apples in these trees are perfectly clean. It's going to be an outstanding year as far as the fruit's concerned. But a few of them did get by my spray program, which again, that was back somewhere in the early part of May, I believe, when all the petals had dropped off of these trees that I went through, and I gave them one shot with spinosad in oil. It appears to have done the job. Any fruit that you find in the tree that has worms in it, you want to go ahead, take that down, get it out of the tree, thin it off. So sanitation is the key here. Don't let it lay around in the trees. And then bag up material, get it out of your landscape, send it off to the dump or someplace. If you even put it in the compost heap, chances are that the heap won't be hot enough to be able to deal with the worms that are in the apples. In that case, the worm hasn't yet come back out. Now there's going to be a second generation of the worms sometime this year. Usually it's about mid-July or so that we worry about more worms, and so we'll put another set of traps up in the trees, and we'll usually repeat another spray program with, again, spinosad and oil, both of them considered to be organic controls. If you did well the first time, you won't have much of a second generation, and so you may be able to get by with just salvaging any infected apples as juice or sauce or something else by carving out the worm damage. But if you're going to market or you insist on having perfectly clean apples, it's going to take one more spray, usually somewhere in the month of July. Hey, that's it on apples, worms, bugs, and fire blight. Have a good June.